Hello and welcome to In Search of the Crystal Skull, an epic escapade into the painfully average. My name is Aaron.
My name is Patricia.
And today we are going to talk about Narnia, the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So, I've not seen this movie in a long time, so we've just come off a refresher, pretty much, just watching this again, and I completely forgot Jim Broadbent's in this movie.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in this movie, to be quite honest. I mean, there's Rupert Grint, there's James McAvoy, there's Tilda Swinton, there's Liam Neeson, there's so many people in this movie.
Yeah, it's just like, it's so crazy, like, just the amount of people that are in it, and it's, mind you, like, I feel like Narnia is kind of like, I don't know how you feel about it, but I feel like it's one of those movies that's lost in the shuffle. Like, so for example, like, it's, we have Lord of the Rings, we have, like, Harry Potter, we have, like, various other kind of, like, fantasy, kind of, like, other movies that are just out there, and I feel like, Narnia, well, I believe it does have its fans, and I do believe that. I feel like I never really got into it all that much. Like, I've only ever seen the first movie, I've never seen any of the others.
Right. Now, I'm actually curious, now, regarding about the other adaptations and the books, I mean, how popular was Narnia over there?
Oh yeah, it was popular. I mean, like, there was stage productions, there was the books, there was even the cartoon show. I don't know if you were familiar with that.
Really? There was a cartoon show?
I'm pretty sure there was a cartoon show with Narnia, but you know what? It's annoying because I've been trying to Google it for ages, and I'm pretty sure it was somewhere. I don't know if it was either like a series of VHS tapes or if it was like it had been on TV. I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, it's kind of interesting looking back on Narnia because here in America, if you were to talk about like, oh, these are the popular book series. I mean, I rarely even hear people talking about Narnia. I mean, when I was a kid, people talk about Goosebumps, people talked about Babysitter's Club, people talked about like.
Would you believe it? I've just found it.
No kidding.
So there was a Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which was made in 1979. So that was like only like 2 years after The Hobbit was made by Rankin Bass. So again, like I sort of like remember that particular movie, but I gotta be honest, like they went all out on this 2004 version of Narnia. Like it was, I mean, like also one thing I really liked about it was just the whole presentation of it, and like it's so, I would say, subtle. Like, I mean, they do something very clever here, where it's like where they're filming like the whole of Narnia, like this could be anywhere basically in the country, pretty much, with just a bit of snow. And but like the way that they introduce Narnia into it, and also like you have all the mystical characters in there as well, it's very clever. It's like it's it makes you believe that every step of the way you actually are in Narnia.
Yeah.
And I mean, it gets a bit more epic as we get into the second and third act, but I mean, like in the first instance, like you truly believe that you're there.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And it's actually interesting when going back into like once again, like we've been doing throughout this retrospective, we've been looking at what the fantasy genre was like during the particular decade, and in the 2000s, it was probably the biggest it had ever been. Yeah. We're talking about like Lord of the Rings came out in 2000 and what was it, like 2001? I think
something
it was
like that. Yeah,
it was 2001 that Lord of the Rings came out. Same year as Harry Potter. So yeah, the books of Harry Potter was the one that kind of like brought it into the mainstream of popularity, because it was 1997 that the first book, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, came out. Then it came into America 1 year later, and it just blew up.
Yeah, I think with the 2000 movies, I think we can honestly say that a lot of CGI was used. I think at that particular time.
I mean, the CGI was definitely more abundant in like towards the 80s and 90s. I mean, we saw this with like Jurassic Park and Mission Impossible, and even with like some certain scenes in Forrest Gump and stuff like that. But the 2000s, it was just a major CGI fest.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, like this was also the decade where we got the new start. Well, I think we got was it the prequels?
Yes, we did. We did get the prequels. The prequels came out. Let's see, it was 99 that Phantom Menace came out. 2002 or 3, that was when Clone Wars was out.
Yeah, and so I think it was like at the time where computers could do all this stuff for you. Not to say that we had Toy Story, for goodness sake. So of course obviously we knew that the technology was there back all the way from about 1994. But I mean, like in regards to how far it could potentially go, the fact that they do such an incredible job with mixing the effects with the real life characters that are there in front of you, it's at times it's almost seamless, but then there's other times where it's kind of like, given that we have like much better technology now, like you can definitely see like there is some kind of like
exactly.
The uncanny valley does kind of like
it
does fall a little bit.
It does when looking back on it,
especially when we get to the polar bear scene.
We'll get there. But yeah, I just want to quickly suffice to say that out of all of the adaptations of the fantasy books that we have read throughout this retrospective, hands down, this is the best one.
Exactly, and so basically the story is, if you're familiar with the Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe, is basically it's once again pretty much an abridged version of the story, and this is something I kind of like, a theme that we kind of develop throughout the entire.
Actually, babe, it's the complete opposite.
Is it really?
Oh yeah, like I remember reading the books a long time ago when these movies were becoming really, really popular, and also when I saw my friend James, aka Jaime-tude, if you remember, he was in the Roald Dahl retrospective with us talking about Tom and Jerry, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and Roald Dahl's The Witches. He did a movie of the Narnia books, comparing the books to the movies, alongside with Face Nelson. And they talked about how C.S. Lewis was like really quick in getting to the point, while in the movie, it was actually, they were taking a lot of time with it. They were actually able to develop more. Like, if you were to read the first chapter, it's like, okay, we introduced the Penvalley children, and then like in the next chapter, they're in Narnia, like that.
Oh, because I just remember like there being more, a bit more detail in the books. I mean, like it's been a while since I gotta be honest, it's been the 90s since I last read them, so maybe I might.
I mean, there are some details in some things, but for the most part, when it comes to like the battle scenes, I mean, you only have like maybe some illustrations and then like maybe 2 pages, and that was it, as opposed to like in the movie, in which it was like 10 minutes worth of.
Yeah, but I mean, like for all these movies, like the battle scenes, I probably imagine that they stretch them out for the movie, for the sake of the movie, because that's what everyone comes to see. In regards to you can't really describe war all that well in books, can you? Like,
not really, but for the most part,
but they nailed the scenes.
They nailed the scenes perfectly. But for the most part, it's pretty much the same. Unlike Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, I mean, Narnia books are pretty short. Because remember that this is a part of a series. It's 7 books in total, with Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe being the second in the book.
Okay.
So, yeah, you basically have that, and remember, this is just like a build-up towards like a major storyline that continues on. And unlike in, say, like, maybe Harry Potter, all the books do not focus on the children. It focuses on other characters in Narnia, and then they would bring up the children every once in a while. Either they're already kings or queens, or they weren't introduced yet because they weren't even shown in Narnia. In fact, the first book, The Magician's Nephew, is about the professor character when he was younger, and he stumbled upon the wardrobe the first time.
Yeah.
So that's what, and even if you didn't even see or even read, Magician's Nephew, and then you just jump into Narnia, I think that the movie does a really good job of like introducing it to you without getting completely lost.
Yeah, I mean, like again, like Narnia is not like my strongest point, so like the only book I've ever read was Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, but that's the only one.
I've read Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I've read The Horse's Boy, and I think I read a few bits and pieces of like the last book. Which, by the way, the ending sucks.
Wow.
But that's beside the point. Anyway, but yes, let's talk about C.S. Lewis, the actual author of these books. So it's actually a really fascinating history about his life, where he went from, a person who was an atheist for 20 years, and then he rediscovered Jesus, and he became a really well-known Christian author, writing stuff such as the Screwtape Letters and Mere Christianity. And then the Narnia books is basically combining Christian elements with a little bit of fantasy in it to give it a much more easier way for children to read it. And I guess around what we said before, when the Harry Potter books became really, really popular, and then Lord of the Rings had its first adaptation, fantasy next to superheroes was like the thing to make a movie out of. That was the way that you could make a quick buck. And so New Line Cinema had Lord of the Rings. Warner Brothers had Harry Potter. And now finally, after teasing it for all this retrospective, we're finally going to be talking about Disney.
Yeah, and by the way, this is actually one thing I wanted to mention. That so out of all the movies that we've showed, if anyone's asking, is it on Disney Plus? Yes, it's on Disney.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is on Disney Plus. All 3 movies are on Disney Plus, so you can go check it out. And so, yeah, I think that with the interest of Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, I think it's really interesting about how they were able to do it because, I mean, this came out in 2004. So the Lord of the Rings trilogy was already done. You know, the Lord of the Rings, Return of the King had came out a year prior, and that movie won an Oscar. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire came out, I think, in 2004 as well. I mean, the book version was already out by that point. But I think around the movies, I think it might have been either that or Prisoner of Azkaban that came out in 2004. So, yeah, I think it was Prisoner of Azkaban. The movie came out in 2004 because that's when they changed from Chris Columbus over to a series of, like, directors that will be changing in and out, and that one would have been Alfonso Cuarón. So, yeah, this was when the fantasy craze became huge. Like, everybody wanted to do a fantasy film, and you saw a whole bunch of them. You had, like, Bridges of Terabithia. You had, like, various others that try to, like, cash in on the popularity. And Narnia, unfortunately, is, like, third place. You have Lord of the Rings first, Harry Potter second, and then you have Narnia third. And it's a shame because it's great.
Yeah, it's just, I think with Narnia, I think the thing I would say about it is that, again, like I said before, like, I think it was caught in between, like, you know, the buzz of, like, other, you know, epics that were out there at the time. I don't think it had a chance to stand out, really. I mean, like, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who are, like, going to be rediscovering this on Disney+. Actually, on top of that as well, like, the first movie did really well, by the way. Like,
it did wonderfully well.
The Prince Caspian, not so much.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing about Prince Caspian, and again, this has been it's been a long time since I've seen it. So, yeah, Prince Caspian, it definitely delves more into, like, the action more than, again, the philosophical Christian themes that are all over this. So they definitely try to play it to a mainstream audience. And a lot of people who are huge fans of the book hated it. And then it just kind of went to a spiraling downward slump when Voyage of the Dawn Treader came out in 2010. And at that point, fantasy films were done. Because guess what? 2 years prior, the first Twilight movie came out. And around that same time, the Hunger Games book came out as well, and then the young adult genre became really, really popular.
I was gonna say, and after the Twilight basically hit the scene, basically every other love story basically trumped it.
Exactly.
Oh man.
Yeah, and I guess it didn't help much that a year after Voyage of the Dawn Treader, the first Avengers movie came out. So that was when the Marvel Cinematic Universe really started picking up steam. So yeah, Voyage of the Dawn Treader came out around the time in which when you had two new genres. Well, I mean, technically one genre became even more mainstream, and then another one took over, which was the young adult genre with, like, Hunger Games and then Twilight and then a whole bunch of others. So yeah, unfortunately, Narnia never stood a chance. And don't forget that Disney, this was not the only franchise they were working with at the time. Around the 2000s, there was Pirates of the Caribbean, there was National Treasure, so it wasn't like they were short on things.
Mm-hmm. I'm just, one of the things I wanted to maybe explore with, Chronicles of Narnia is that I'm just looking through the cast now. Like, I'm just thinking, is anyone actually, from that movie actually, besides obviously the big names, like, did any of the kids actually go on to, like, do anything else after that?
I don't think so, because I haven't seen them in a lot of other films after this. I mean, but to be fair, these are a lot of, like, British actors, and I don't know a lot of the TV shows or movies that they would have been a part of, but I haven't really seen them outside of Narnia.
I have to say, when I'm clicking through them, and when you're going through, like, Wikipedia articles and, like you said, citation needed, it's kind of like, it's like, yeah, the fact that they're not being all that much talked about, like, it kind of gives an example of, like, where they basically went after that.
Yeah, I mean, it follows the classic example of, like, these are child actors, and then after a while, they wanted to live normal lives. So maybe as soon as they were done with Narnia, they probably wanted to just go to school and live off normal lives. And
well, one became an acting coach apparently according to this, so maybe that's probably the reason why.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's pretty much like the Roald Dahl retrospective all over again, in which, like, other than, say, Freddie Highmore as Charlie and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, pretty much every single kid didn't do anything outside of the movie that they're known for. Peter Ostrom went off to be a veterinarian, and Paul Terry went off to be a mathematician at a major university. And I don't know about the kid who played as Luke in The Witches. I mean, he just disappeared off the face of the earth.
Yeah, I think it seems like child actors don't seem to have a long sell-by date, which is quite funny, really. So, I guess, I don't think Justin Timberlake kind of counts, does he? Because he was in the he was in the Mickey Mouse Club.
Yeah,
I
mean that's different though.
That's different. Though,
yeah, that's different. But
so,
I mean, like looking into like what the format was in terms of like films. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, Disney just came in just a tad bit too late because Harry Potter was already in its third adaptation. Lord of the Rings was already done, and it's kind of like similar to when they try to cash in on the popularity of like, hey, we have these TV shows from the Disney Channel. Let's see if we can make them into theatrical movies. When they try to cash in on when the Rugrats movie became really popular, and then they try to do Doug's first movie, and that fell apart, and they only did 3 movies. Kind of ironic. They did 3 movies of Narnia.
Yeah, so... But I mean, like going into the story, I mean, like it's the Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe, basically. So you have Lucy, who first of all, I don't know if there was again my memory's so fuzzy on the books. Like I don't know if they actually referenced World War II.
They never did.
They never did. So that's basically just for the movie, I guess. You know, that they basically were in that. And mind you, I guess they needed something to kind of like ask, well, why is it that these kids are all living with this professor? I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe that's probably the reason why they need. So they're evacuees from from London, and they've come over to the countryside in order to live with this professor, and so they have this strict housemaid who basically makes them do all these types of rules and everything like that. So they're sitting there, they're bored, they don't know what to do, so they decide to play hide and seek. Lucy goes up into the highest point of the house, and that's where she discovers the wardrobe.
Yeah.
And so she hides in there, but then by doing that, she basically transports herself to Narnia by doing that. So.
She transfers herself over to Narnia. She's looking around, and then she stumbles upon a faun by the name of Tumnus, who basically just they click off immediately. They become like really close with each other. In terms of like, you know, he shows her around her house and offers her tea and cookies and crumpets and stuff like that, and plays music. But in reality, he's doing that so that he can kidnap her and deliver her to the White Witch, because according to a prophecy, 2 sons of Adam and 2 daughters of Eve are supposed to go into Narnia, defeat the White Witch, and that way winter will be over and peace will reside all over the world.
Yeah. So, actually, I think this bit in the movie is actually, you know, stretched out a lot longer than from actually the book. And so, like, because, you know, I think if I recall from, like, you know, the animated movie, that she actually only kind of briefly met him, and then after that, she basically went back.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was saying before, is that the book is so short because that... you know, things go quickly. Like, you have, like, one chapter in which, like, you get to introduce the kids, and then the next chapter, they're already in Narnia. So it was, like, really, really fast. But the filmmakers decided, we need to take our time with this, because the Lord of the Rings films, they're super long. They are 2-3 hours, depending if you're watching, like, the extended director's cut. Harry Potter's the same thing. It is 2 hours long. Again, extended director's cut. So I guess they thought, hey, there's not really much meat in here with these Narnia books. We need to stretch it out, because the movie's 2 hours long.
Exactly. And so, but I mean, like, yeah, and also you can kind of tell by, like, you know, adding in length and, like, adding in a bit more epicness, like, you can tell what they were going for. It's like, you know, we've seen Lord of the Rings, we've seen, like, all like Harry Potter, we've seen, like, all these other, you know, epic movies. Like, this has to be this will be our epic, and this will be what we
exactly. So yeah, I mean, Disney needed something, especially since, if you remember, as we talked about before, the 2000s wasn't exactly a great year for Disney, especially when it came to their animated films. I mean, they had their live action movies. They had the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. They had this, and they were remaking a lot of their old movies from the 60s and 70s, like Parent Trap and Freaky Friday and Herbie.
Wasn't yeah, I was gonna say, wasn't that the Lindsay Lohan movie?
Yep, that was all the Lindsay Lohan movies. This was back when she was big in her career. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Like, so Disney wasn't in that. It wasn't in the right mode, I guess.
Yeah, it was pretty much around the 2000s where they were saying, yeah, you know what? 10 years ago, Disney was the top of when it came to our children's entertainment. We don't need them anymore. We have DreamWorks, who is doing all these pop culture references and being sly and 3D. We have Pixar, who's doing the emotional stories and it's 3D. We have Blue Sky Studios. They have Ice Age. It's 3D. And then we have a whole bunch of other things in between that was trying to rip off Shrek, such as Hoodwinked and Happily Never After.
Yeah. I mean, like, once Shrek became a thing, I think everybody else kind of, like, just jumped in pretty much.
I mean, again, 2004, same year Shrek 2 came out.
Exactly. So, but I mean, going back into Narnia. So, again, I love the one thing I actually liked about this movie was the cinematography.
It was great.
It was at one point like there was one shot where they were actually on the lake and the camera panned up and the camera panned down and it looked like they basically were running with the characters and like I thought this is something this feels like Star Wars cinematography. I feel like someone at least must have either watched the Star Wars movies or like had watched something along those lines and thought, that type of like, camera shots and things like that, and like watching the action, like, the action is basically where you're gonna get the audience excited. We're watching Aslan, run and run and run. He's like, he's going there, like, trying to get to the war, or like, he's trying to, run to save the kids or something like that. Like, like it shows, it knows where to excite the viewer, and I think that it was very good.
I think so too. I think that the cinematography was great. I thought that the presentation was great, and I also think that the acting was great. I mean, the four children, even though that they didn't really go off and do too much after Narnia, I think they all did a fantastic job.
Yeah, by the way, like, the character, the girl who plays Lucy, like, I think she was my favorite character, like, amongst the four.
Yeah.
Like, she was so energetic, and like, she was so like, she's played this, what is imaginative, young girl, and I think, and also that she has this, I don't want to say naiveness, but I think she's like this. She's what you would expect, a little girl to like, be, and also she's very polite too, which I think plays to the time because, obviously, with the war and everything, a lot of kids had a lot of growing up to do during that time. So,
and she's the only one, from what I can see, she's the only one who's kind of still acting because, she's currently on The Spanish Princess, whom I am familiar with because sometimes my mom and my sister will be watching it. So, I guess that she's the only one who kind of like stuck with her career because the girl who played as Susan, I mean, nowadays from what I understand that she's doing she's into like The Office now, and I think that the other people who like worked on the movie,
I believe the guy who played Peter he's now an acting coach.
Oh, okay, yeah, he's an acting coach, so that does make a lot of sense. And as for the kid who played as Edmund, I mean, yeah, I mean, I know he's a political advisor. Yeah,
well, I mean, like, I think the problem is that Edmund, the Edmund character, I think, you're in a bit of a danger to be typecasted, like, kind of like this, oh, hey, you're the kid who, like, it's turned at the very beginning of the movie, and then after that, you basically became good. So I think, Edmund, I think, by the way, like, but the cool thing about Edmund is that, you basically end up kind of playing, one of the major heroics of the movie. Where he comes down and like smashes the ice wand of the witch, but then ends up kind of like getting stabbed because of it.
Yeah, so, exactly. Yeah. I think I really enjoyed like the Christian parallels that are all over this movie. Like if you were to like look into it, and if you know anything about the Bible, then you can definitely tell that there is a lot of parallels. I mean, obviously, the first thing you notice is that two sons of Adam, two daughters of Eve. So for those who don't know, Adam and Eve were the first humans who resided on earth after God had created the heavens and the earth after 6 days, and then the seventh day he rested. So it's
quite interesting that, in Narnia, like, they say two sons of Adam and two daughters of Eve, like, it looks like there's been no other humans in this world. And so these are perceived to be like, the sons and daughters of Adam and Eve, the only other two humans that they are aware of,
exactly,
in this world.
Yeah. Exactly. So I think that another parallel that a lot of people have pointed out is that Aslan, who is the lion and who's the true king of Narnia, he's supposed to be Jesus, and then the White Witch, who claims herself to be the ruler of all Narnia and has left everything cold, has left winter for over 100 years, but no Christmas, she's supposed to be Satan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hell truly froze over.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of religious, mentions in this movie.
Oh, tons.
So,
I mean, exactly. I could probably do like an entire podcast just discussing about it, but we'll be here all day if we do that.
Yeah, if we do that. But I mean, in regards to we've spoken about the characters are delightful. I think.
Oh, they're great.
And the witch is also is very intimidating.
Oh yeah, Tilda Swinton does a fantastic job.
By the way, like she has this kind of like poker face where it's kind of like you really don't know what what to expect from her. You don't know if she's going to be, you don't know after the first interaction whether she's going to basically be quiet or whether she's going to be angry or whether she's basically going to laugh or whether she's going to, you don't know what to expect from her. She has like this, she just has this kind of stone face that you kind of like, this very intimidating glare that she has that you don't know what to expect. And in the first instance, she treats Edmund pretty well. Gives her Turkish delight and stuff like.
Which, by the way, I mean, the first time that you gave, I think it was your aunt who gave me Turkish delight for the first time when we went to go see the Jungle movie together, and I'm like, it's just a piece of candy. And it's like, this Turkish delight is like looking nice with the powdered sugar and the fruit. And it's like, where's this Turkish delight?
Exactly. By the way, if you're inferring that my aunt is a white witch, then I would insanely disagree with you.
I would never say that.
Exactly. You heard it right here, folks.
I remember in the books it was saying about that the white witch had put like a spell on the Turkish delight and had kind of like hypnotized Edmund into doing exactly what the white witch had said. Well, in the movie, it made it look like that Edmund was really greedy and just hated his brothers and sisters and would do anything for him to be king and for them to be the servants. And it was kind of like a nice little build-up because we saw this from the beginning of the movie where the bombs were attacking,
London.
Were attacking London. The Germans were attacking London, and
by the way, if you put the subtitles on to this, they basically they replaced the German subtitles with basically just German speaking, which is kind of like literally it just says German speak.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't like that. I get it's supposed to be kind of like oh well, hey, here's all. I don't know. Like, why not just put in the subtitles basically what they're saying?
Yeah, here's the town, we're gonna attack it, or ready on my command, or something like that. But
exactly.
No.
Yeah, it just is. I hate it when they basically just put I remember when I was watching a video on YouTube and it was like a wrestling show and the bad guys obviously is the foreign German and instead of putting subtitles in or what they're saying, they basically just put in the words foreign in brackets and he's like, oh, come on.
No, don't do that.
I don't like that. I wish they'd stop doing that.
Yeah. So basically we saw the build up where Edmund rushed back even though there are bombs attacking their home just so that he can get his dad's picture so they can be able to take it to them in the shelter.
Well, this is foreshadowing.
Yes, it is foreshadowing.
It's all foreshadowing. But also, it's not just foreshadowing just for the sake of foreshadowing. It's the reason why he wants his dad's picture is because his dad's out on the front line in a war somewhere, and he doesn't know he doesn't know where he is, and he doesn't want to forget him. So obviously, he goes in there and gets him.
Yeah.
Much to the annoyance of everybody who's trying to save themselves and being blown up.
Yeah, exactly. And then we kind of follow Edmund's character arc with Peter saying why don't you grow up and why don't you do as you're told and all that kind of stuff. And he just has this sour exterior towards him. Mm-hmm. And then when you realize
at the very beginning of the movie, all these kids have their problems. You have Lucy who's probably a bit too naive. You have Susan who is too logical. And then you have I guess Peter who's a bit too hard-headed and he just takes command and doesn't really kind of listen to basically what's going on around him. And you have Edmund who's basically just he feels he can't be he feels like nobody trusts him and but doesn't give anyone a reason to do so.
Yeah, again, going into the parallels again, it feels really similar to the disciples of Christ, in which they all had their little flaws. You had Peter who denied, you had Thomas who doubted, you had Judas who was the traitor. So yeah, every single one of them had flaws, but they were able to bring out the best in them because of Jesus, or in this case, because of their journey, because of the gifts that they received, and because of Aslan, they were able to fulfill their prophecy.
Again, religion is built into this story.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could even argue that when Edmund betrays, his brothers and sisters for Turkish delight, it's basically the equivalent of when Judas Iscariot betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver.
Mm-hmm. So, we get basically further into Narnia, and so all the kids end up in this world, and but basically the world is starting to kind of fall apart even more because Titmus, isn't it? Yeah,
Mr. Tumnus.
Tumnus, sorry, I keep pronouncing it. So Tumnus ends up getting captured by the White Witch and then ends up getting frozen.
And the reason why is because Edmund had told the White Witch that my sister, she's with Mr. Tumnus over at this little home that's right over there by the forest. And, basically everything that the White Witch knows is because of Edmund.
Exactly. So that kind of like keeps the story going along, and Edmund's in constant peril because of this. And so it's that's one thing. Like you would think that somewhere on the third try, like he would learn to keep his mouth shut. But
but I think the tipping point was when he saw the fox being petrified.
Exactly. So, within this, then, we get to the point where they have to do something, and then they end up meeting this beaver. And,
they meet up with Mr. and Mrs. Beaver.
Yeah, and by the way, they are shocked at the fact that he talks, which I think is hilarious, actually. Like
beavers can't talk.
So, they end up with the beaver. Edmund actually drops to the witch and says that that's where they are hiding.
Yeah,
and then by the way, I love the fact that it's the wolves who are basically like the enforcers, if you will, of like the White Witch as well. By the way, a lot of Arctic animals are like they do a good job at saying, oh yeah, she's moved around with these massive polar bears, and or she's this reindeer basically can't take her around and everything. Like everything is all
it makes
winter,
a lot of sense considering that it has been winter for 100 years, and you can see why there's polar bears, there's reindeer, and all of these animals that would fit in.
Exactly. So it's good that they basically garnished the White Witch with it wouldn't make any sense just giving her random demonic animals or anything like that. I think the fact that it's aesthetically presented in this way, I think, is probably that's how you make a villain who you give her an intimidating theme. When you put in intimidating animals that can survive the cold. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I would say that out of all the villains that we've seen in this retrospective, again we have Smaug and the dragons from The Hobbit. We had King Haggard from The Last Unicorn, and then we had the goblins and Prince Froglip. And out of all of them, the White Witch is hands down the most intimidating. She's the most cunning. She's the most strategic, and she is hands down the best acted.
Exactly. I think she's probably the best out of all the four that we've seen so far.
I mean, to be quite honest, everything. Music, cinematography, acting is all the best. And it's kind of not fair considering that this is the only live action movie we've covered in this retrospective.
Yeah, which is, mind you, that kind of goes into animated movies because it's not hard to animate something intimidating, is it? Look at Jafar from Aladdin, when he turns into that giant snake. You can't tell me that's not intimidating.
Yeah, I think that when we saw the progression of where fantasy films were at the time, around the 2000s, they pretty much perfected it.
Yeah, exactly. And so, mind you, I think it wasn't until they found out you could actually kind of get away with some of the stuff, again, the three-boot, harpy from the last movie that we watched. But I think it wasn't until then that they could decide where's over the line, where's under the line, and where basically can you do this with a villain.
Exactly.
I think they eventually found it with basically the White Witch here in Narnia.
Yeah, and I think that when it comes to the progression of the story, you have Peter, you have Susan and Lucy. They start off from going into the forest, and then slowly but surely everything starts to melt because they're starting to slowly fulfill the prophecy, and also Aslan is arriving.
Mm-hmm. So, it looks like there's going to be a massive war from the looks of it because a lot of people are sick and tired of the White Witch basically ruling everything. So there is a massive resistance of all other animals. By the way that they intelligently pick all these creatures basically because these are creatures that don't typically survive in the cold, except some maybe the centaurs, maybe they probably will survive the cold. But,
yeah, the centaurs would definitely survive the cold, but everything else beavers would most likely be hibernating, and foxes would basically be changing its coat.
And cheetahs definitely would not be anywhere in the cold.
No, cheetahs and tigers, not.
Yeah, exactly not. So I think it's I like how imaginative it all is. When they put all these people together to ready for war. These are, I mean, I don't know. Cheetahs and tigers are more kind of chasing after prey and things like that. They're not war machines by any chance of the imagination. But even then, when you put them in a battlefield, you're racing them towards with other things. If you're looking at that and you're thinking good grief, what would I want to do? Crushed to death by a centaur, or like, you know, be hacked and sliced to death by a leopard or a tiger or something like that. Like, you know, it's there's not any good choices there when you're in front of all of that, I don't think.
Yeah, and it does make a lot of sense why the kids would be really hesitant of it, because they had just literally escaped from a war that is going on, and now they have to fight a war just so that they can be able to save Edmund.
Yeah, if it was kids today, it'd be Fortnite. But anyway, we digress.
Anyway,
well, I think in regards to like how the acts all kind of like, you know, come together. So you got the first act where basically the kids first go to Narnia. You got the second act where, you know, they're preparing for the war, and then you got the third act, which is the war itself. And so, you know, in regards to how the story flows, like it flows, I would say, a lot better than some of the other movies that we've watched.
Yeah, like Hobbit was too fast, considering that it was a large book, but they had to cram it in either with like songs or just with, you know, abridging the story.
Yeah.
You had The Last Unicorn, which was slow, very slow.
Yeah.
And then you had The Princess and the Goblin, in which it started off promisingly, but then it just fell apart because it was just relying on its cliches.
Yeah. One of the things to pick up on as well, like, you know, we were talking about the villain before, like, you know, King Hargot's basically the opposite end of, like, you know, the spectrum in regards to the villain, isn't it? Like, you know, he says, I'm sad because, you know, unicorns don't make me smile, you know, aren't there to make me smile anymore, and, like, things like that. Way you got the evil witch is kind of like, you know, oh, I don't want to make it, I don't want to make things that make me smile. I want to turn everything into statues.
Yeah, I want to make everything cold. I want to take over everything. I want everyone to fear me.
Exactly, yeah. So it's, you know, I think in regards to our characters, and I think in regards to our scenery, and I think in regards to the overall how the movie is put together, it's far better put together, I think I would say, than some of the other ones that we watched.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
I mean, I guess that's not very fair to say in regards to everything else we watched, because, you know, it's taken decades of perfection, I think you could say, to get to this point in regards to fantasy movies.
Yeah, and also the fact that we already had a foundation that was already previously established with Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter.
Exactly, yeah. So, we get to the final act, and so, I mean, before then...
Yeah, but before then, we have to talk about what Aslan did to save Edmund.
So, basically, funny enough, like, it's... I keep forgetting about this part of this movie, and it was still pretty shocking when I saw it, and that is that, you know, the evil... you know, the
White Witch.
The White Witch, I don't know why I call her the evil queen, the White Witch, comes in, and basically just walks through, like, the enemy camp, like, and nobody would dare go near her or anything like that. So, like, she just walks in, you know, asks to speak, to Aslan, and says, you know, I want my boy back so I can kill him on the stone table.
Yeah.
Yeah, which, you know, is pretty intimidating in itself. So Aslan says, okay, well, you know, we'll talk this out alone. And so everyone is kind of like, you know what I would love to have seen more in that movie, though? Because keep in mind, like, some of the White Witch's, you know, army were there escorting her, and then all the people were there. One thing that would be interesting in that whole quiet would be, like, you know, oh, well, you know, their army's over there, and their army's over here, and, like, maybe they can, like, kind of like stare each other down, and, like, have a gaze off or something like that, like, but, you know, nothing kind of, like, happens. It's kind of like they're just there. I mean, they can't really do anything, because they all start fighting, then obviously the evil queen's going to, you know, the evil queen, the White Witch and Aslan are going to come out and basically just, you know, stop it, but, so they have respect in those regards, and so, but, it'd be a very intimidating atmosphere. It's kind of like, it'd be kind of like, you know, when, in Spider-Man, when Peter Parker ends up with I think it's Osborn coming over to their house, and like they have like a meal with you know, with his aunt, and like with him in there, and then like, but you know, he can't attack Osborn because that would break Peter Parker's aunt's, you know, Aunt May's heart if he did that. But at the same time, you know, they have to be civil.
Yeah, especially and especially since this was at the point in which when Osborn had discovered that he was Peter Parker.
Yeah, exactly. So you know, it kind of plays out like I would like to have seen that probably been maybe expanded on, really, like, you know, the two opposing armies kind of like just staring each other down, like, you know, just kind of feeling each other out, if you will.
Yeah.
But then obviously they both come out anyway, and then it's decided that Edmund will be spared, and then the Queen says, well, you're going to keep your promise, and it's like then he ends up, you know, roaring right madly at Aslan. And by the way, the White Witch is intimidated by Aslan. So,
I mean,
which is well, I don't know, like I don't know how to feel about that, because the fact that she had the gall to, like, you know, say, okay, I want to speak with you in private. And,
well, I mean, that's not too much of a surprise at all, because going into, again, the Jesus parallel, there's two instances in which it happened. In the book of Job, Satan approached God saying, you have a person named Job who, is like perfect in every way. He has his land, he has his family, he has his oxen, he has his money, he has everything. I bet he would curse you if you took it all away from him. And he said, okay, let's do it. But you can do anything you want with him. You will just not harm him. You can harm him if you decide to make him sick, but he will not die. And so it showed off that Job was really loyal to God. A second attempt was back in the book of Matthew, in which when Satan had tempted Jesus when he was wandering in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights with no food and no water, and then Satan approached him 3 times and tempted him, saying, turn these stones into bread, bow down before me, and I will have everybody follow you. Jump off there, and the angels will grab you. And then Jesus saying that it is a sin to tempt me. So this is not too much of a surprise at all.
Yeah. So, it's one of these, most versed in Bible. But
there's another one, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah, exactly. But the deal is made that Aslan sneaks off in the middle of the night, and all the kids are wondering what on earth's going on. So, Lucy and Susan.
Yeah, Lucy and Susan. Yeah.
Go out to follow him, and he says, "Oh, please accompany me in my time of need." And so that they do that, and then Aslan says, "Okay, we have to stop here, and then please farewell." So, but they don't do that. Basically, they wander to the side and wonder what's going on, and Aslan is basically being sacrificed on the stone table.
Yeah, he is. It's very similar to when Jesus sacrificed himself over on the crucifix so that he can save people from their sins.
Yeah, and I guess you could say that him being shaved, I guess, is probably the
crown of thorns.
The crown of thorns, and so that was that. And and they bound him, put him on the stone table, and then the White Witch kills him.
Yeah,
and it's mind you, it's even though you don't actually see it, it's a pretty brutal execution. It's just like you can even though you can't see it, you can definitely know where that knife has gone.
Right straight into his heart.
Yeah.
And not only that, but she humiliates him. She shaves off his mane. She ties up and maims him and puts him on the stone temple and says, yeah, I have you now. And so then she stabs him into the heart and then leaves him on the stone temple to rot.
Yeah. So, after all of that has happened, there was just this kind of eerie silence at this stone table with this, this dead Aslan lapped on top of it.
Yeah.
And so, Lucy and Susan, you can probably imagine, they're incredibly upset.
They are.
And, by the way, then these mice turn up and, start trying to cut away, the binds, and, Susan thinks it's, them disrespecting, no, get off, and everything like that, but, no, it's, trying to get them off. So, by the way, Lucy at one point actually pulls out the bottle to say, oh, maybe I can try and do something about it, but he said, no, it's far too late now.
Yeah, so I guess we forgot to mention that. So, the gentleman who decides to give them their Christmas gifts, I guess he's Santa?
I think it's implied he is Father Christmas.
Yeah, Father Christmas.
But whether I don't know why they didn't refer. I don't know. Is it copyright issues?
I have no idea.
Who owns the copyright to Santa Claus?
I don't know.
Coca-Cola?
Maybe it is Coca-Cola.
Holidays are coming.
With the polar bears.
Imagine if they did that and it's like they come up out of the cave and it's just a big red truck and it's just got a Santa Claus coming out of this 18-wheeler. Oh, that'd be hilarious.
That would be great. So Father Christmas essentially gave he gave the first 3 the gifts. So he gave Lucy a red potion made out of a red flower that is supposed to heal any injury and a dagger. He gave Lucy a bow and arrow and a horn to call for help, and he gave Edmund a sword and a shield.
Yeah.
So as for
actually, he didn't give Edmund that initially.
Not initially, but Peter, he gave him
the sword. Yeah.
The sword and the shield. Yeah.
Exactly. So so basically they have all of that now, and it's well, I'm sure there's a lot of kids wondering why didn't Santa Claus give me weapons? Yeah, we didn't have a water fight. Joey.
There you go.
Yeah.
So again, Lucy and Susan, they are staying at Aslan and the stone, table at the night, and in the meanwhile, there's a preparation of this battle that's happening, and
so you got this. By the way, I was in the dark light. I really liked the general character, who was the what creature was he? Was
Centaur.
No, not the one on the on the White Witch's side.
Oh, you're talking about the Minotaur.
The Minotaur, yeah. So like in the dark he looked really cool and intimidating, but then when he got into the light, he looked like a Power Rangers villain. Like I thought like they should have like done a bit more design work, I think, on him.
Like the ones in God of War are really intimidating. They're huge, first of all, and they have like these massive axes and spears.
Yeah, maybe I wasn't paying attention too much to the army, but I mean, like they had all these giants as well.
Yeah, they had giants, they had trolls.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the giants made it all. Like, I don't think we actually saw them actually. Like,
they only had like 4 or 5.
Yeah, like it was. You haven't seen them like taken down or like actually do anything like massively intimidating. None either.
Yeah, not like, really. I mean, you saw.
I don't think it was cut for time. I don't know. But,
I mean, I have no idea. I mean, we just saw mostly like the Minotaurs who are doing most of the fighting.
Yeah, exactly. So, they had other creatures as well that were like, they had a lot of dark creatures in all.
Oh yeah, like the trolls, and you had the Cyclops. Yeah, there was a lot of them.
Yeah. So we get to the point where they are aware that Edmund's obviously in the clutches of the manager. They've been aware of that for a while, and so then they send off. Before they did that, these wolves come over to try and intimidate Lucy and Susan, and then Peter comes in to protect them all, and then ends up killing one of the wolves, and then ends up becoming a knight because of it. So because he struck the first bound, which I think was pretty cool in itself.
Yeah.
Then going back to to the stone table, and they're all upset that but then they realize they got to go and to help out, and so they go away. But then the stone table breaks and Aslan is gone. And I believe that also represents the resurrection.
Yes, it is. Yeah, that is probably hands down the biggest one. In which when Jesus passed away and he was inside of the tomb, shortly after when he was resurrected, his tomb cracked and he was able to set himself free. So yeah, I think that was again a really nice parallel. And it just so happens that Susan and Lucy were there to see it. Where in the Bible, Mary Magdalene was the very first one who saw Jesus while he was alive.
Yeah. So, but I mean, in regards to like this particular resurrection, this resurrection wasn't because of to free everyone from sin. I mean, no, this isn't the context in this movie.
No, it's not.
The idea is that Aslan was resurrected because the witch should not have killed Aslan on that table, and so that basically, according to the dark magic, is a gimme. The stone table breaks, and then
exactly. Yeah, according to what the ancient magic or whatever says, it's like you basically are not killed if you have never committed treason. If you are able to take the side of another traitor, you will, death will be set backwards.
Yeah. So, that's the only thing thinking. I mean, I'm sure in other movies, it's more well explained, like, the dark magic and like all the other magic, how the magic law works, I guess, in this world. So, I think that's one thing that kind of goes a little bit against the movie. Like, I think the world is not all that much explained of like, how stuff came to be and things like that. Like, it was normally in movies like this, you would probably start off with that.
Yeah, and, you do start off with that. And here's the thing.
But though, like the Lord of the Rings came out before the Hobbit, so
exactly, right.
So.
I mean, you also have to remember that very similar to like Lord of the Rings and Hobbit, this is the second book after Magician's Nephew where they actually explained what Narnia was. So all that world building was already established before, but that movie adaptation never happened.
Exactly.
So for a lot of people, this was their very first time knowing about Narnia, unless of course they read the books.
Yeah. So we're starting to get to the war now, and Peter leads his troops into battle, and the White Witch obviously looks, she's got the polar bears out, and has got this massive chariot and everything like that, and it's a pretty intimidating presence.
Yeah, and also a nice little touch is that she actually wears the mane of Aslan as part of her outfit.
Actually, I forgot that actually. Good grief! Yeah, actually, I went out. I'll share about the back if we ever revisit it, but this battle goes on, and they actually, I like the fact that it's not just like, oh, let's all roar in and let's just have like a massive scrap. Like there's tactics involved, which I think is really well thought out. So instead they do aerial bombardment, so they just bomb all these evil creatures with rocks and everything. Like everyone's just gonna get everyone's getting stoned in in another sense. well, not the sense that probably other people think. But then during the battle, they decide to change tactics because obviously they've got the numbers against them. And so instead of like fighting them like just squarely on the battlefield, they lure them into the rockery and where they can set up an ambush, and then basically they can just pelt them with like all like other stuff and fight them in narrow corridors. So I mean, there's good war tactics actually put into this. This was thought out.
Yeah, I mean, as opposed to like in The Hobbit, in which like we have this big army, this big battle with the three armies. Oh wait, the goblins are the enemies the entire time. Let's go kill them, and we never see it.
Exactly.
Or how about in Princess and the Goblin, in which like, oh, you just stomp on their feet and then you just defeat them really easily, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah, which by the way, one thing we actually left out in explaining in that in the Princess and the Goblin was that they didn't actually explain how they came to know all this stuff, prior.
Yeah.
Like like I don't know, it wouldn't make sense if like, okay, we passed all that down from generation to generation. Okay, that makes sense.
Sure.
But But anyway, we're not talking about that movie. We're talking about Narnia.
Yeah.
We get to the point where Edmund is going to go through his redemption. Like Peter tells him to run and take his siblings and get out of there. Like because it's all falling apart and he needs to stay behind. But as you can see, that Peter is not doing very well by himself, and Edmund realizes this. So he jumps down and smashes the wand, and obviously he gets stabbed because of it. Mm-hmm. So he gets his heroic moment, and then when it all looks like it's all going to go pear-shaped, Aslan comes into the scene and ends up taking some more warriors with him, and then they end up having more of a battle, and Aslan saves Peter from from death, and ends up. And by the way, the witch in this movie gets a pretty grisly death.
Yeah,
like
she is eaten.
Yeah, exactly. Like, well, she's not eaten. She's mauled.
Well, yeah, she's mauled, and the body's gone. I mean, where do you explain that?
I don't know actually. Maybe if you look at how the camera was positioned, it was positioned behind some rocks, so maybe it was like to hide the body of like
I guess that's fair.
Yeah, which I mean, like I don't think we want to see like a mutilated kind of witch.
Yeah, especially since it was PG.
Exactly. Well, yeah. So I think they were pretty. Also there was tobacco references in this movie as well, and also there was the fact that we saw Aslan lay dead up on that stone table. You would have thought that would pushed it to a 12 at least, but or 12A at least,
Yeah, well, I mean, for here in America, to push it to a PG-13, you had to have blood and you had to have cursing and a whole bunch of other things, but they kept it just enough for it to pass in the PG rating, which it deserves, by the way, because a lot of people say that PG, the purpose of it is that they're able to get a lot more away than just a regular G rating. It's like G rating is like the simple stuff that you would see in a lot of family entertainment, but the PG is just pushing it a little bit far enough that it doesn't go into a PG-13, like All Dogs Go to Heaven or a lot of the films from the 80s.
Samuel L. Jackson's basically saying, I've had it with these mother effing witches in this mother effing fantasy world. Everybody strap in and break up with some windows.
Yes.
Oh man, like so all the Owl House fans are probably listening to this. I think they probably know what they're laughing at because I made a reference to that recently with Owl House. So.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so then we get to the end of the movie, and Edmund is we get the I don't feel anything in these moments anymore. Like one of the characters is dead, like and we think that he's dead, and everyone's like, they're crying over him, and then obviously someone comes up with like a potion to like bring him back to life, and then he comes back to life, and yay, like I don't know, like it's been done so many times now, like I'm really surprised movies aren't making fun of that cliche now.
I'm sure that they are, but we just haven't found it yet.
Probably not. Probably it's an epic movie somewhere. I don't know.
Who knows?
But so Edmund is revived, and everyone has reconciles and like, hey, we've won the war and everything, and then because of that, they all become kings and queens of Narnia.
Yeah. So they all have like their own little sections, and so it's like what was it, like Lucy gets the eastern part of the sea, Edmund gets the western part of the woods, we have Susan gets the southern part, and Peter gets the northern part, and then they're all given like names. It's like Lucy is like she's like the she's the queen, and I forget which one it was, like I think it was,
I think Peter was the magnificent,
Peter was the
Edmund was the just, and
Susan was the gentle,
and Lucy was prophet.
Yes, she was.
But like we're sorry, everybody. We've been doing this all day. We're at that point pretty much.
Yeah.
And so, but and also one thing that they do, and this is also in the books as well. They show that they don't really show them growing up in Narnia. Like they just cut to the fact that they're chasing a stag through through the woods or anything like that. Which you would have thought we would have shown a bit of a montage of them maturing into being the leaders that they are now.
Exactly. But, unfortunately, I guess because they had to cut it for time because it was almost reaching the 2-hour mark.
Oh yeah, exactly. So Edmund rediscovers the light pole with the candles in there, and then he finds the other end of the wardrobe again, and they go back through the wardrobe, and they are back to as young children.
Yeah, I guess we need to talk about that because it's established much earlier on when Lucy was playing hide and seek that she was gone from with Mr. Tumnus for hours when in reality she was only gone for a few seconds.
Exactly. So time obviously goes very still in that environment. It doesn't actually even move at all because when they get back, the professor's there with a cricket ball that got thrown through the window.
Yeah, it's only been 5 minutes. It's only until Prince Caspian in which you know about how much time is passed between for them it's 1 year had passed since they've been inside of the wardrobe in Narnia, and then in reality it was hundreds of years since they've been gone. Mm-hmm. So yeah, time goes who knows how it works, to be quite honest.
Yeah. So they then get back to the new world, and the professor says, they don't believe that the professor is going to believe everything that they say, and then he ends the movie, "Try me," and then we get to the credits.
Yeah.
And that's also another kind of thing that movies now kind of do. And don't get me wrong, animes have been doing this for a while, where it's kind of where they'll end on a small little word, and then after that credits. It's something that seems to happen in more modern movies now.
Yeah, exactly. And then very similar to modern movies, we have to have an after credits scene.
Yeah. So Lucy tries to go back through the wardrobe, but is unsuccessful, and the professor says, "Oh, you won't go through there anymore. I've already tried." And the professor basically says, "You'll be called upon when need be."
Yeah, and also, he said something very important was that you can only go in when you're not looking for Narnia, which is true, by the way, because the first time that Lucy went inside of Narnia was when she was trying to play hide and seek, and when Edmund was trying to find Lucy inside of the closet when she was entering in, that was another instance in which he wasn't looking for Narnia, he was looking for Lucy. And then you have all four of them trying to go inside of the wardrobe to hide away from the housekeeper, who was upset because Edmund had broken the window and had destroyed the knight that belonged to the professor. So
yeah. But babe, I think in this movie it's a different adaptation. You can only find Narnia if the current adventure makes $700 million at the box office.
I guess that's true.
Make enough money, and then we'll go back to Narnia again.
Yeah, unlike in Princess and the Goblin, in which do we get to see the adventures of Princess Irene and Curdy? It's nope.
Yeah, but don't rule again. I say, don't rule it out. There's Hollywood's run out of ideas at this point. So
I guess that's true.
That idea is still outstanding.
Yeah,
so.
and this would be the first of a trilogy of movies that would come out with Narnia. But unlike, unfortunately, Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, it's incomplete because Voyage of the Dawn Treader came out at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Exactly, and there's also the fourth Narnia movie's constantly rumored, but again, like the Austin Powers fourth movie, it never seems to kind of happen.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
I mean, there was rumors for the longest time that Magician's Nephew was going to be their next adaptation because we need to have a prequel, but unfortunately that never happened. I mean, first of all, this was around the time in which when the fantasy craze was over, it was done for.
Exactly.
I mean, it would already been drained dry because everything else that came out afterwards was just pretty mediocre.
I think when it gets to the point where Matt Groening basically has to make a Simpson-esque kind of fantasy series out of that. Do you remember that?
You're not talking about Disenchantment, are you?
I think Disenchantment, yeah.
Okay. That came out recently though.
Yeah, it did. So I think when the fact that when people are bringing out these kind of parody kind of shows I'm still waiting for what's his face who created Family Guy?
Seth MacFarlane.
Okay, I was still waiting for Seth MacFarlane to do a Family Guy version of here's these fantasy creatures. In fact, I even go further than that. Look at Disney Pixar's Onward. Like, that in itself was kind of making fun of, like, the fantasy trope.
Yeah, it was. Basically, it's just saying, like, oh, we don't need magic anymore. We have technology.
Exactly. And so, like, I mean, that wasn't executed as well as it probably could have been. And also, I think it came out a couple of years too late, but that's just me.
Yeah, so, I think that, around I guess maybe fantasy was just, like, shifted into a new direction because, around the same time that Voyage of the Dawn Treader came out, Adventure Time came out. Mm-hmm. And Adventure Time was able to revitalize fantasy in a completely different way because the creator of Adventure Time, Pendleton Ward, was a huge fan of Dungeons and Dragons, and he was a huge fan of other animation stuff. And so he took his love of Dungeons and Dragons and just basically just did a new spin on it and a new twist that made it like really unique and fascinating.
Yeah, it's kind of sad really because it feels like, I mean, don't get me wrong, like, fantasy stuff can still work. I mean, if you've been listening to Aaron and Patricia, like on our other podcast, we talk about Amphibia and the Owl House constantly.
Oh yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, like, but those are obviously series rather than actually, like movies.
Yeah, movies. Yeah. I mean, nowadays, I think more people are like, when they think of fantasy, they're tuning into like Dungeons and Dragons playthroughs where people are just constantly, having like their own D&D campaigns, and even to the point in which Vox Machina is actually an animated series based off of Critical Role's own Dungeons and Dragons playthrough.
Yeah, that
has gotten to the point in which that fantasy animated series are becoming popular, but not so much as fantasy movies, at least not anymore.
I think what will happen is maybe it's kind of like some movies I think that will were around at that in the 2000s, maybe in the 2010s. I think it needs to it'll need to take a bit of a break, and then I think eventually somewhere down the line I think we'll see the next big epic.
I guess that's true. I mean, at some point, there can only be so many superhero movies. Am I right?
Exactly. Yeah. So eventually they'll get bored of Marvel. Eventually they want to do something else.
Yeah, or maybe Marvel will get into the point in which the movies are not as good as it used to be, and then one movie comes out, becomes an instant hit, and then they're off to do that.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, so, I made that joke about making it over $700 million at the box office, because that's true. It did make a phenomenal amount of money.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but unfortunately, the second movie came out, only did half of that.
Yeah, and like I said before, because there were some changes to the book that basically, removed a lot of the Christian elements and tried to make it more of a mass appeal. It's like, let's add more action scenes, let's add more battle scenes, let's tweak the story around a little bit.
They literally took the soul out of the movie, and it did not do as well.
Yeah, they basically took the soul just so that they can be able to put action stuff for the mainstream. It's
that just doesn't work.
You don't do that. You do not do that.
When you take away elements for the sake of just saying let's have a beef. If you want to do a beefy action movie, just hit up Sylvester Stallone. I'm sure he'll make you another Expendable sequel. The abundance of Expendable sequels that are out there. But but in regards to how you handle Narnia, it's been structured around a particular theme, a particular structure, and you don't suddenly rip that out because you want more shooty bang bang or anything like that,
or stabby kill.
Exactly, yeah. So it's again unfortunately, dare I say there was one particular types of movies that we're thinking of doing where where the only one movie out of the trilogy was the best one. We're thinking probably doing that somewhere down the line, but
we are thinking about doing that, but that's much later on.
Yeah, but I think Narnia, unless I'm mistaken, the first one was the good one, the second one wasn't so great, and then I think the third one basically just kind of
it killed it.
It killed it. Yeah, exactly. So unfortunately,
this was the opportunity for Disney to have their own fantasy genre, because as we mentioned before, this was when New Line Cinema and Warner Brothers, they already were at the peak of it, and Disney was trying to find something to stay afloat because their animated movies were not doing very well.
No.
So, once again, they just came at the wrong place at the wrong time. They just struck it too late.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe it's time we scored this thing.
All right, then.
Okay, so I'm going to give Narnia, I think, an 8.5. I think 8.5 is a fair score. I think
it is a fair score too, because there's a lot of fantastic things about this movie, but at the same time there's some things that it could have been done better, I would say. But you know what? Out of all of them, if you were to say out of the movies that we talked about throughout this retrospective, this is the one that I would go to first, immediately.
Exactly. Right, everybody. Well, that comes to the end of Fantasy Month for In Search of the Crystal Skull. So we will be making an announcement of what our next month is going to be very soon. And so, but until then, thanks everyone for tuning in this month, and take care, and bye for now.
See you later.